Hi folks, Andrew Chappelle here from Andrew Chappelle Natural Bodybuilding on Facebook. Also check out my Instagram as well, fueled by Scott's Oats, for some more content as well. So today I'm going to talk about my nutrient intake, specifically talk about the macronutrient splits that I put up on Facebook the other day there. Now, the reason I'm going to talk about this is because a couple of people had some questions about the splits, about how much I was eating in terms of carbohydrates. Was this particularly a lot of carbohydrates? Also, I got an email asking me as well, what do I do about my nutrients in terms of the off season? What's the percentage split that way as well? So let's address this first question first. So some people were saying, well, is that a lot of carbohydrates that I'm consuming as part of my diet to get in shape for this competition? Now, I did a video previously on protein, and if you're interested in that, go and have a look at it. I talk about protein in depth and why you should have more, or perhaps why you should have less, and certainly what my beliefs are on that. But now we're going to talk about carbohydrate a little bit here, so we'll not go into detail on the carbs. Now, just for some recall, I'm currently on about 441 grams per day. That works out at around about 5 grams per kilogram of body weight, give or take, or around about 50% of my nutrient intake is carbohydrate. Now, people have said, well, is that a lot for natural bodybuilding? And the short answer to that is no. Okay? So, if you look in the literature, if you go any textbook and you look at what are the recommendations for strength-trained athletes or power athletes or resistance training athletes looking to build muscle mass, you'll see that typically the recommendations are to consume between 4 grams to 7 grams carbohydrate per kilogram of body weight. Okay, so I'm currently on about 5 grams, so I'm well within that sort of 4 to 7 gram recommendation to sort of fuel your workouts, make sure that the person is appropriately getting enough energy in their diet. So now that I'm on a diet, it makes sense that I'm also consuming a lot of carbohydrate as well, okay, because I'm still within that 4 to sort of 7 grams. So I'm always a little bit confused when people sort of say, well, why do you eat so much carbs, or is that not a lot of carbs? And I guess I just don't understand it. Coming from my perspective, when you look in the textbooks, you read the stuff and it says, okay, consume a lot of carbohydrates because it fuels your workouts. Yeah, it's because you need carbohydrates largely to do resistance training, and it's your sort of number one energy source that you're going to have for this sort of resistance training. So it makes sense that you would still consume a lot of carbohydrates as part of your workouts, and you wouldn't overtly compromise these carbohydrates as well. Also, at the same time, as I've discussed before, slower weight loss and smaller energy deficits are more likely to result in more lean body mass preservation than sort of more severe deficits. So if I start off at, say, 500 grams or 6 grams per kilogram body weight, it doesn't make sense to immediately go from that carbohydrate intake down to something that's, say, 3 grams or even 2 grams, as low as that, because that would be a huge deficit and I wouldn't be fueling myself for my workouts. So again, to me, it doesn't really make a lot of sense why people would go down that route, but again, lower carbohydrate diets are effective for weight loss as well. Now, I don't really follow anyone on Instagram. I'm not really a big social media person as well, apart from this channel that I put out here. So I don't really know what people are doing or recommending in terms of strategies for getting themselves in shape for competition. I do know, if you look at the literature on this, there's now, what, 6 case studies you can go out there and find on natural bodybuilding case studies, preparations for competitions. And if you look at the literature on that, what we sort of typically see is that people are sort of following much lower carbohydrate intakes than what I'm following just now. So typically you're seeing between maybe 2.5 to maybe 3.6, 3.7 grams per kilogram of body weight. Now, that's not a lot of carbohydrates. That's actually, again, below that sort of 4 to 7 grams that I was talking about earlier on. So I guess I can see why there might be some sort of push towards that lower carbohydrate intake just based on the bodybuilding literature. However, the recommendations that we have for natural bodybuilding contest preparation, which aren't terribly specific, I should add, on carbohydrate intake, still suggest that you take in or consume around about between 37 to about 60% of your calories from carbohydrates. So they kind of protect against that sort of low intake, and provided that you calculate your overall energy intake accurately, then you should be able to diet on, say, much higher amounts of carbohydrates, certainly than those case study accounts. So I guess that's the discussion on what I'm consuming. That's the discussion on what people are consuming in terms of, if you look at the case study literature from some of my my peers, natural bodybuilders that I know, pro bodybuilders. Again, they're all sort of high carbohydrate dieters as well. I wouldn't be surprised if they're consuming more than me at any point during their preparation as well. But it's scalable. So maybe they've got more manual jobs. Maybe maybe they do more resistance training, more cardiovascular training. But so they'll need that higher carbohydrate intake, but they'll still probably be consuming above at least a minimum threshold of probably about 4, maybe even 3.5, as low as that, and going up to maybe about 7 grams per kilogram body weight of carbohydrates. So that's what they'll be doing. So I go with what I know myself, with the science from reading the literature, the experience, and what my peers are doing in terms of what I'm taking in carbohydrates intake style. Now, in terms of how to calculate your nutrient intake, or what I do in the off season with regards to my nutrient intake, there's a few different ways you can do this here. Now, people ask me about percentages, and I've got a real sort of bugbear with percentages because they're not sort of scalable across different people percentages. So just from this back of the envelope calculation that I've put together here, where I've got my own nutrient intake on this side and I've got another nutrient intake on this side, in my own circumstance, I'm consuming 3,140 calories. If you take a person that's consuming 2,500 calories at the same body weight as me, and that they've calculated their energy intake as requiring that, in terms of percentages, they're going to be consuming vastly different total amounts, and vastly different relatively to the body weight. So over 286 kilogram people, I'm consuming 441 grams of carbs per day, based on 52% of my energy intake being carbohydrate. The other person's consuming 52% of their energy intake is carbohydrate, but they're only consuming 346 grams of carbohydrate a day. So 4 grams versus 5 grams per kilogram of body weight. It's a big difference. And if you're going to have a coach, or you're talking to people and you're saying, okay, well, my coach says that I need to consume 50% of my calories as protein, or 40% of my calories as carbohydrate. If you've not worked out your overall energy intake accurately to a specific level, then you could still be on a high protein or a high carbohydrate diet and just still not be consuming enough energy, ergo you end up losing lean body mass. So I try not to work in terms of percentages. I try to say to people, okay, let's work in grams per kilogram of body weight, because as the example I've just used there, you can see we could be consuming the same percentages, but we've got vastly different intakes, and I'm eating a lot more food than you. And when it comes to preserving that lean muscle mass or building more lean muscle mass, then I'm probably going to build more than you as well, even though all things being equal, percentages are the same. So it's not necessarily a good way to do it. Now, in terms of off-season compared to this point, I'll eat more grams per kilogram of body weight of carbohydrates. So right now I said 5 grams, off-season maybe pushing up to say 6 or 7 grams. However, I'll monitor it, I'll see what sort of shape I'm looking in. It'll depend if I'm getting ready for a strongman, powerlifting or bodybuilding competition or not. Will depend on how much fat mass I intend to gain, because I kind of sit around about 90 kilograms, and if I can get lean with a higher intake, then I'll eat that intake. If I notice I'm getting a little bit fat, then I'll drop that intake a little bit down. So I don't necessarily want to prescribe intakes for people, because you need to sort of play about with things a little bit yourself. So I will just say roughly you should probably look for somewhere in the region, again, like those recommendations I gave you earlier on, 4 to 7 grams per kilogram of body weight carbohydrate. In terms of protein, not as vitally important in the off season because you've got a calorie surplus. You're not necessarily having to worry about preserving lean body mass. You can also manufacture non-essential amino acids from other macronutrients, so it doesn't necessarily have to be as high. So right now I'm about 2.7 grams per kilogram of body weight. I would easily and happily come down to somewhere in the region of about 2 grams per kilogram of body weight, because I'm not trying to preserve lean body mass, just need enough so that I can build the tissue, and that's basically it. In terms of fats, again, not going to give percentages, but with protein and carbohydrate really taking the lion's share of all my nutrients, then fat I have to kind of compromise a little bit in terms of my intake. However, we don't want to go too far with our fat intakes, because then we're just consuming excess calories, and it's very easy to get excess calories from fats because we get around about 9 calories per gram compared to 4 calories per gram of protein and carbohydrates. So what we're talking about there, right now I'm on about 0.7 to 0.8 grams per kilogram of body weight, which works out maybe about 60, close to 70 grams of fat per day. I would maybe take it up a little bit. I wouldn't go necessarily as high as 1 gram per kilogram of body weight, maybe just somewhere below there, around about 0.9 grams per kilogram of body weight is where I would probably go with my fat intake. However, with the off season, what I'm basically trying to do is hit a sort of energy threshold, make sure I've got enough carbohydrates to fuel my workout, make sure I've got enough protein to fill my workout, and when I consume both of those two things, the fat intake is going to come up just by pure fact that it's incidental, along with all the other things I'm eating. So I'm not too fussed about that. At the same time, I'm not really that fussed about necessarily being that stringent as well with my diet in the off season as well. So I will consume enough calories to make sure I'm getting by. I'll consume my 5-6 meals a day, but if I want to have something, then I'm going to eat it. If I see a millionaire shortbread that I want to have with my coffee at lunchtime, then I'm having that. If I want something at the weekend, I'm having that. If I want to go get a beer, then I'm having that as well. As long as I have the other food coming in to satisfy that energy intake, then no problem for me at all to go and do that sort of stuff. So I've got that basic calculation of stuff that I'm having. I'm eating my 5-6 meals a day to get by, to build the tissue. But again, in terms of a percentage of what I'm actually taking in with all that other incidental stuff, I don't actually know what I'm taking in really. But again, that's why it's the off season, and my diet really starts when it's time to go into the competitive season or the on season, when I really bolt things down and really go for it in terms of losing that excess body weight. And that's just the way I do it. I do that for lots of different reasons, but probably largely to keep me sane, because bodybuilding is hard, and sticking to a plan whereby you're having, say, scheduled cheat days all the time, or you're sticking to something so strictly that you have no scope for eating an extra food throughout the day, you'll not last very long in this sport at all, because when it comes to the diet, which is 20 odd long weeks, then you've essentially been on a diet for the whole year time, and I don't think that's particularly good for you. Anyway, so hopefully that answers some questions. Just to go over sort of the key main points again. I eat a lot of carbohydrates, largely because my body needs a lot of carbohydrates because I'm resistance trained. My intake is not particularly high in comparison to what recommended guidelines are. In terms of macronutrient splits in your off season, or how you should calculate macronutrient splits, going by grams is a better strategy, or a better way to do this, so that you can scale it compared to other sort of people. Percentages are great if you've worked out an adequate energy intake, but again, you can't really make your percentages comparable to other people. So if someone's eating 500 calories less than you, then they're going to be eating completely different grams per kilogram of body weight, regardless of the actual overall percentages. So hopefully you found this informational video useful. And any more questions, then send them on to me. And in the meantime, keep working hard, keep lifting, and thanks for watching.